Alright, so I came up with another point the other day, and I wanted to make a video about it, and I called it Learn by Teaching. And what I mean by this is, is when you obtain other people's opinions by stating your own, right? Now, this does come with the cost of being directly in conflict with your ego. And if that is difficult for you to do at first, that's fine. Like with all things, I believe, that it would be difficult at first to at least become habitual or be able to do openly, right? So, and at times it can be difficult, which makes sense. But the reason why I want to talk about learn by teaching is because when it's a lot more honest when somebody is teaching you something and then they tell you you're wrong on this or they think you're wrong on that. They're a lot more honest and more direct. And that's the type of criticism I wish to receive, personally. So, I guess my way is that I teach you a certain topic, right? Like maybe, for example, how to listen or something else. And then I go and make a video on it, upload it, and then someone says, no, actually, what about if you look at it like this? And I know from my perspective that they are being honest at that point because they're criticizing. And whenever people are criticizing, they usually, what they're doing is essentially taking somebody's perceived ego and then they're trying to one-up them so they feel like they have a heightened success without, it's basically a feeling of heightened success without actually doing any work for it. It's basically the human mind trying to shortcut the work. I mean, that's basically the development of ego in a logical 4-point. Is that a word? I don't know. Tell me if it's a word or not. But I always make up new words anyways. It's kind of fun. It makes things more interesting. But anyways, when somebody like tries to learn by this, they have to also be aware that they don't involve themselves into something that could potentially be like a major conflict with their beliefs, right? It's like, for example, right, if somebody says something about Christianity and an atheist responds to them, they have to be careful to, like the teacher in a sense, has to be careful to not directly fight them, but he has to learn how to look at their perspective and at least understand what drives their like reasoning behind them being an atheist, right? Like even if you're Christian, Muslim, so on and so forth. If you at least gain the understanding of how they think, you can then proclaim a point where maybe you see a flaw in their ideology compared to your own, and then you can start an actual discussion rather than an emotion-driven Twitter post that lasts 30 comments long and that people look at and laugh because you're just looking like an idiot. And especially when if you state something emotionally to your audience or somebody and then they respond with another emotional claim which may or may not be backed up by evidence, then you start getting to the cabal of fighting each other for an apparently undisclosed reason because it's a subconscious reason of fighting because it's for the ego, like I mentioned, rather than actually sitting through and learning from someone else's point of view. So I wanted to ask you, how do you learn? If you're most people, you're probably going to answer with something along the lines of, I learn by other people, right? Because I do not know as much as other people, but I wish to become smarter so I can share my knowledge to others. If that's the case, perfect, right? Like that personally honestly describes me pretty well. Obviously everyone's different, so you take that advice as you will. But may I recommend to you that instead of just becoming a learner, try to teach in this sort of way. So that way you actually also build almost like a leadership teaching quality, which can be very useful, especially if you're like engaging in a sort of verbal battle, for lack of better terms. Actually, there's probably definitely better terms, like conversation. There you go. Conversation. Then you can actually go in it and have a more generalized mindset of what do, like being interested in what they think about rather than what you are ready to respond with, which actually I have that point. I'm going to make another video on how to listen, which I previously mentioned in this video, but I'm going to make another one on how to listen properly, which obviously I can't cover all of, like every part of that, and I'll recommend a book to you that does describe it pretty well in that video. But either way, what does this have to do with learn by teaching? If it wasn't apparent, which fair enough, this has to help you clarify how other people, what they actually mean when they criticize you, right? So first of all, getting through the honesty layer, right? Instead of going through like the email, well, actually people are usually honest in emails, but like going through like the dating format of information giving, right? Like when you're trying to talk to somebody, they say this and this, they pick out things, right? Instead of transferring your information in a way where people pick things out to comment to you on purpose, why can't they just take whatever they believe and form it into something of cognizant like ability and then present that to somebody else and say, what about this, right? Then you start having an actual discussion and you can actually learn by teaching, which I think is a really cool concept that a lot of people probably miss out on because they just never thought of it before, or they don't know how to apply this into their life. So basically what I'm saying is you should at least once, right, try to teach somebody something, even if it goes wrong, even if it goes horribly wrong, right? Worst case scenario, your teaching was horrible. Would you rather regret the fact of not trying it, or would you rather regret the fact that for one time you messed it up, right? It's like the thing with going to the gym. Would you rather mess up on a set of bench press or be home watching Netflix, right? In order for you to criticize yourself, you have to be on the right planet, right? Does that make sense? Like, you don't need a spacesuit if you're on Earth. There's oxygen, you can breathe. You need a spacesuit if you're on the moon. So the first step would be to at least try getting on the moon. If that doesn't work, or maybe you end up hating it, fair enough, then you can go back and try something different. And then go on. Okay, I tried that. Wasn't for me. I move on. Perfect. Now you actually have something there to accredit yourself and be like, hey, I tried learning by teaching before, but I didn't really like it because I wasn't able to formulate correct statements, and it made me feel miserable trying to talk to people and explain things because they're miserably stupid. You say X, Y, Z, whatever, right? Okay. Perfectly fine. But it's about at least putting in some upfront effort, some conscious upfront effort to then spread to other people, and then maybe they end up trying it themselves. Because from my current understanding, in general, people will be like those birds up there and they'll fly and flock together like that when one of them says a point and the other one likes it, and the other one comes in, and maybe a couple of the birds fly away because they end up not liking it, right? So that's my general point, right? And then they go and try a different thing, as you saw right there. Some of them went away, some of them were going over there. That was actually perfect. I did not expect that. That's pretty cool. But either way, so if you learn by teaching instead of just learning, it could also maybe, for somebody like you, it could help actually understanding things better, right? Maybe you're not the type of person to sit down in a English class and learn about literature, but instead you're the type of person who would love to read things like how money was created, or like how or maybe how like philosophers like thought of things in their time. Like maybe that's one of the things. I don't know. It could be any example, but there's my forefront, whatever just came up, right? So to bring this home, learning by teaching can be a pretty substantial tool if used correctly. And if you're able to bring that value to a table of maybe your work, your business, whatever you like to do, you can then be able to describe something even better in the long term, and then actually remember things and become wiser as a person. And that for me is one of my main goals, is learning. Like, not like, oh, go to school and do this, like not that type of learning, but like the type of learning where you're able to enjoy it yet actually gain some like permanent value out of it, right? So if I didn't read, for my example, if I didn't read 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson, I don't think I would be able to understand how concepts form and materialize, and how you can help yourself get a better grasp of order in your life. Like, I wouldn't know anything about that, but like now, like I don't know it to the extent that he does, but I at least know a higher baseline than the general population. So maybe I'm a bit better off, because at the end of the day, we're competing with each other, right? Like, that's just how the world works. Well, not how the world works, but how humans have crafted the world to blossom into, I guess. That's that. I like that word, blossom. But with that being said, I would say I recommend to try learning by teaching. You probably might gain a lot of things, even ideas that you couldn't originally think of. Like if you were to sit there and think about, how do I get around this problem? And then someone says, oh, maybe you do this. And then that actually works. That's learning by teaching. You taught them that you have a problem, and then they went and forwarded you a solution for free. Instead of having to go and hire a mentor to figure out, how do I get better at this thing, you can instead teach something else, or teach something alike to it, describe a problem. Like, obviously you don't go like, I have dementia. Like, okay, like, that's a little bit more extreme too. But if you instead like kind of foresight it, like, what if someone has X, Y, like, right? If you do something like that, but like obviously indirectly, then someone would be like, oh, okay, I actually think of a solution that would be pretty good. They go and send that, you read it, and then you're like, oh, I just learned that this person was able to think of this, which I didn't think of, and it actually worked like really well. Obviously, there could be the disadvantage of this not working when you think it would, because our theoretical concepts of life and the reality always have a mismatch, because that's just like basically an environmental factor that humans probably won't or will ever be capable of like purely predicting every time correctly, like mastery, right? Because mastering the future is not within human conception, right? Because if it was, or maybe when it is, if possible, like maybe like 1,000 whatever, right? Could always theorize about that, but maybe then. But then also, what is determined as perfect is a limiter of being, which that is a different thing anyways. But basically, learn by teaching. I think it's a pretty cool mechanism, and I hope that maybe if you use it one day, it helps you out. So yeah, that's gonna be it for me. Bye-bye!